So imagine that you've busted your butt working to earn a promotion at your job. You've earned a bigger office and a window, but your boss won't let you move into the office because they would have to take the office from somebody else. How mad would you be? Would you be mad enough to finally quit your job? Find out what this has to do with the United States next. Welcome to Learning with Sprayberry, where we do our best to make social studies fun, easy, and educational. Today we're tackling the Proclamation of 1763. The example given at the opening isn't too far off base from what really happened. Let's dig in and find out what I'm talking about. So the French and Indian War was over and the English colonies had won. But that's actually where the problem starts. France gave a large chunk of the land that it had over to the English government. While this doesn't seem like that big a deal, it's going to cause some conflict. Many Native Americans who worked with the French suddenly found themselves in the odd position of now having to work under English rule. The war, which was a victory for the English, was extremely costly. Financially, the war cost England £70 million. Additionally, it was going to be expected to cost £30,000 a year to keep enough troops in the colonies to protect them. In terms of manpower, close to 14,000 British citizens died in the war. Effectively, the fighting and the war doubled the country's debt. This is definitely a cause for English concern because they'd been following the policy of mercantilism. This means that the colonies were supposed to be a money maker, not a black hole of cash. When it comes down to it, conflict with Native Americans was extremely expensive. To make matters worse, colonists paid only about 1/20th of the taxes that English citizens living in England paid. England had even gone as far as reimbursing the colonies £275,000 for the cost of the war that they paid. English lawmakers and citizens felt that maybe the colonies should start paying their fair share. On the other end of the spectrum, the colonists felt that there was absolutely no reason for them to have to pay for it because they didn't start the war. In an effort to keep the colonies financially viable, England chose to lay down the law. To try and limit the money suck of the colonies, England chose to halt the expansion of the colonies. The King of England, George III, chose to create the Proclamation of 1763. This was a ban on expansion to keep colonists from accidentally or purposefully stumbling into another country's or tribe's territory. Colonists were not allowed past the Appalachian Mountains, specifically the watershed line from the mountains. You can guess how well this went over with the colonists. Colonists are basically early Americans, and telling Americans where they can't go is a surefire way to make sure that they go there. Let's talk about consequences. We're going to start with the colonists. One of the major issues with this proclamation is that many colonists felt betrayed. British military weren't the only ones who fought and died in the war. Colonists felt that they had also earned the land through blood, sweat, and tears. To make matters worse, many people were promised land in this new territory that they now find unsettlable because of the King's proclamation. George Washington and his men were those who fought against the French and the Native Americans and were promised land that they couldn't inhabit. Some people naturally chose to head over the border despite the restrictions. This meant going into territory that had been reserved for Native American tribes. Because England wasn't trying to start another major conflict, the colonists who chose to cross the border were either forced to relocate back to the safe side or found themselves without any defense in the event of a conflict. The stress from the proclamation has often been singled out as an early cause of the revolution. Being limited to the lands that England decided were available did push many colonists to dislike the rule of England. However, it wasn't the only cause of the revolution. It was probably a catalyst. To see some other factors leading towards the revolution, check out my video about the acts leading to revolution. I'm not really good at naming stuff. Let's take a look now at the consequences for Native Americans. Prior to the French and Indian War, Native Americans and French colonists tended to have a much more coexistive nature. Native Americans tended to work with the French in many contexts, and Native Americans trapped animals and their fur was then sold to French trading posts, where they gave the natives things that aren't available in the New World. This meant, for the most part, French and Native Americans got along pretty well. Now, I'm not saying that there weren't conflicts, because there were, but there was usually less conflicts than there were with the English. Well, once the French vacated the land and turned it over to the English, Native Americans felt a drastic change. At best, the English viewed Native Americans as a sovereign nation with which they could negotiate. Good. Despite the proclamation, England did, in fact, on multiple occasions, spread over the boundary after treaties with tribes. On the other hand, in the worst situations, England viewed Native American tribes as pseudo-colonists that they could try to control and order around. This is obviously a big departure from the coexistence that they felt with the French. Let's hit on the question of the day. This approach to preventing conflict kind of makes sense. Keeping two conflicting sides apart from each other just makes common sense. However, colonists also have a point that they fought and died for the right to expand into this territory. So the question is this: who do you think has the most valid point? England trying to prevent the colonists, or the colonists wanting land that they've earned? Let me know down in the comments below. So this week I want to thank Lovers Fall Too Hard for subscribing on Instagram. If you want to be featured as Subscriber of the Week, it's ridiculously easy. Subscribe. Now. I'll wait. You can also subscribe on Instagram, Twitter, and here on YouTube. Anyway, thanks for watching Learning with Sprayberry, where we try our best to make social studies fun, easy, and educational. Thanks.